Good morning, everyone. I would like to thank the organisers of the 2022 Agricultural Water Summit for inviting me to present on behalf of the Australian Government regarding Australia's approach to water management. Australia and Chile share many similar challenges in relation to the management of water resources. Water scarcity presents a significant challenge for government policymakers and water users in both of our countries. Under the backdrop of managing competing priorities for water use across agricultural production, broader industrial use, urban use, and environmental water, our challenges have never been more complex. This event provides a great opportunity to share our experiences and the challenges between our two countries. Today's presentation will provide a general overview of Australia's national water management policy environment. Before introducing you to an important example of Australian water management across our borders, the Murray-Darling Basin. The presentation will look at the challenges to water management in Australia. Also, Australia's National Water Initiative, which in 2004 set the foundations of Australian national water policy and upon which we have since relied. Then I will take the opportunity to talk to you about the Murray-Darling Basin, a key area for Australian agriculture and a priority area for the Australian Government. We will look at the water market and the main reasons why water allocations can vary from state to state and from farm to farm. To finish, we will discuss some new ways Australia is ensuring the most efficient possible use of water resources, and please feel free to ask questions after the presentation to the panel. Australia is the driest permanent inhabited continent in the world. Only Antarctica has a lower precipitation. It has historically had a highly variable climate, both suffering droughts and flooding on a regular basis. Since the 1880s, water has been increasingly used for irrigation, which now dominates water use, with over 90% of consumed water going to irrigation in Australia. This water use has supported a large agricultural industry, one of the major industries in Australia. This use continues to expand, more so in the lesser developed parts of the country. At the same time, Australia has increasing its population with increased urban water demands. The substantial use, together with climate change reducing runoff into the rivers and the southern parts of the country, is a significant concern, particularly for our Murray-Darling, the impacts of pollutants on the Great Barrier Reef. These multiple challenges are reflected in the above diagram, which outlines both the need for past reform and the need for continued reform. The main challenges of water management and governance in Australia are extreme climate conditions, population growth, threat of climate change, water scarcity, ensuring livelihoods in rural communities, pollution, and the ecological degradation. In 2004, the Commonwealth Government led the development of the National Water Initiative, a set of detailed principles and actions aimed at achieving a compatible and comparable set of water management arrangements that would enable a sustainable level of take in all river systems and enable water to move to its highest use value. The MWI has served water reform well for the past 17 years, but now it is in need of some updating to reflect lessons learnt and the need to further areas to be reformed, for example, a greater focus on urban water management. The pillars on which the National Water Initiative rests include achieving sustainable water use over the allocated stressed water system, preparing a comprehensive legal framework of plans, improving pricing for water storage and supply, expanding water rights trade, introducing water rights registries and water accounting standards, better managing urban water demand. It also led to the progressive review of water reforms, which we review every 3 years through the Productivity Commission. The 3-year reviews undertaken by the Productivity Commission have been extremely valuable in both tracking actions by the state jurisdictions and identifying where greater focus by states is required, but also in identifying areas which need further reform. The next step for the National Water Initiative in Australia is to update policies to respond to the new challenges in both the urban and the agricultural water management sectors. Let's now look at a specific example of water management in Australia, and I'll explain the rest of the Australian experience in that context. The example I'm using today is the Australian experience with the Murray-Darling Basin. The Murray-Darling Basin is Australia's largest and most complex river system, covering 1 million square kilometres, about 14% of Australia's land mass, of interconnected rivers and lakes in southeastern Australia. It traverses several states and territories, including Queensland, New South Wales, the Australian Capital Territory, Victoria and South Australia. The basin holds significant economic, cultural and environmental value, with more than 2.2 million people calling the basin home, including 40 First Nations groups. The basin is also known as Australia's food bowl, with approximately 40% of Australia's agricultural produce coming from the basin. The basin hosts some of Australia's most unique habitats and ecosystems, including 120 water bird species and more than 50 native fish species, with 16 internationally significant wetlands across 12 ecoregions within the basin, and provides a seasonal habitat for birds that migrate from all over the world. Over the years, the combination of droughts and increasing human use of the waterways for agriculture, manufacturing and communities led to a decline in the health of the basin. Recognising the importance of maintaining the basin as a healthy working river system for all Australians, the Australian Government passed the Water Act in 2007, which establishes the legislative framework for managing the basin in the national interest. Under the Water Act, the Murray-Darling Basin Authority was set up as an independent statutory authority responsible for developing the Murray-Darling Basin Plan in 2012. The aim of the basin plan is to bring back a healthier and more sustainable level of management across the rivers, lakes, wetlands and plant and animals that depend on them. At the same time, it continues to support farming and other industries for the benefit of the Australian community. The basin plan was developed to manage the basin as a whole, connected system, and to set limits on the amount of water that can be taken from the basin each year, while leaving enough water for the environment. This is known as sustainable diversification limit. Now you know that the Murray-Darling Basin is why it is so critical to Australia and how complex the cross-boundary issues are being managed through the intergovernmental groups and the agreements. Now I can begin to describe our system of water entitlements and allocation. In Australia, we have two types of water rights. These two types are called water entitlements and water allocations. The water entitlements is that a person or a business holds is a perpetual amount of water that the licensee may access. It is the upper limit that a person may be allocated. The water allocation, on the other hand, is the amount of water that an entitlement holder is distributed. The entitlement holder may not access more than they are allocated, even if their entitlement is greater than the amount allocated. So on a basic level, I hold an entitlement for X amount, but the allocation I will receive will depend on a range of factors. It is not common for water entitlement holders to be allocated less than their full entitlement amount. Now let's look at why allocation amounts vary and what drives such variation. One of the reasons that an allocation may be lower than an entitlement amount is due to the variability of the basin inflows. In wet years there is more water available, so allocations are higher. In dry years there is less water available and allocations will need to be lower in order to ensure water is available to reach as many entitlement holders as possible. This results in allocations being different year by year and indicative for water to be traded from low to high value uses to ensure it is being utilised where it is most needed. Within a year it is possible for allocation volumes to differ as well. For example, if more rain falls, it is likely the allocation amounts will be recalculated to ensure every entitlement holder is being allocated water when it becomes available. These calculations are carried out every 2 weeks. If there is sufficient inflow in the system, an entitlement may be filled to its full volumetric level. This graph shows over 100 years of flow data in the Murray-Darling Basin. Note the extreme variability between wet years and dry years. The average might be 33,000 gigalitres, but the dry years are often much lower than that, balanced by occasional wet years. There are more years with below average inflows than above average. This period of intense drought in the 2000s we call the millennial drought. The drought has now ended and we have had several years of good rain, but many farmers in the Murray-Darling Basin are still feeling its impacts financially. At the moment in Australia, we're experiencing the start of La Nina weather pattern, which means we will see large amounts of rainfall in the catchments over the coming summer. The other main driver of differences in allocation amount is what is known as security of entitlement. The security of an entitlement can be thought of as similar to the priority. If you own high security entitlement, it means you are a higher priority. The system of security for an entitlement is determined by each state. In this example, we look at the system used in New South Wales, Australia's biggest state by population. In New South Wales, the priorities are listed here. The first water that is allocated in Australia goes to critical human needs. Water for critical human needs is not tradable and does not come under the water market. After water is allocated for critical human needs, the licence types listed above are filled in order of priority. Farmers who need water for household use or to sustain livestock are the highest priority users. As soon as any water is available in the system, it is first allocated to holders of this type of entitlement. Secondly, towns can choose to buy additional water, so a town holding a town water supply licence is second in line to receive an allocation. Remember, this is in addition to the water that a town is allocated for critical human needs, which is always allocated before anything else. After town water supply comes high security, which is normally farmers who grow seasonal crops. Then there is a category for conveyancy water, followed by general security entitlements for anyone not belonging to the higher priority group. So, in summary, the allocation I might receive varies based on A, the amount of water available, and B, the type of licence I have. The final point that is worth noting in the water allocation process is the Murray-Darling Basin Authority, which will make allocations to each state within the basin based on availability of water. The decision is taken on a catchment level. Catchments that contain large amounts of water will mean that the state in which the catchment is located will be allocated a higher amount than in a state that has largely dry catchments. The state will then distribute the water to the licensee holders according to their own security or priority processes. Finally, we can talk briefly about the incredibly important role of investment into efficiency measures. In very simple economic terms, when supply cannot be increased to meet rising demand, in the case of water, this is true, the supply that does not exist to be stretched as far as possible. In water, we do this by increasing our water efficiency. Efficiency measures look to save water losses that are otherwise not available for production or for the environment. That is, reducing the loss due to seepage, evaporation and leakages. As part of the Australian Government water management reforms, the Australian Government has invested significantly in improving water use efficiency, more than $13 billion since 2010. Investments have been made to improve water use efficiency and production by switching to high-tech irrigation systems. Significant investments have been made in non-agricultural infrastructure to improve water supply in open canal networks. Efficiency measures are activities that charge water to use practices and save water. They are an integral part of the basin's planned Sustainable Diversification Limit Adjustment Mechanism, which is in place to benefit the environment and communities across the Murray-Darling Basin. Efficiency measures make more water available for the environment. Through the investment in infrastructure, water losses can be reduced and water savings can be shared between farmers and the environment. For farmers, this means there is more water available to apply to the root zone of crops, increasing agricultural productivity and supporting the ongoing viability of regional communities and industry, while at the same time improving reliability of water supply. For the environment, this means that water is secure where it would otherwise not be available for irrigation or the environment. This is a win-win outcome for all. While investments in water recovery through purchasing entitlements from the water market, on-farm efficiency measures and off-farm efficiency measures have been used to recover a significant portion of water required for the environment, the Australian Government has moved to exclusively recover water from off-farm infrastructure investments. The socio-economic impacts of off-farm infrastructure investments are much less, in fact. There are demonstrated positive impacts to regional stimulus, agricultural production, community wellbeing and flow-on economic effects from more jobs being created in regional areas. There are also upside benefits ongoing from upgrading and modernising water delivery infrastructure that also harnesses automation, telemetry and metering. The Australian Government's current investment is through the Off-Farm Efficiency Program, with 1.54 billion committed to mainly off-farm infrastructure projects. As Australia's Agricultural Counsellor to South America from the Department of Agriculture, Fishery and Forestry, I am at your disposal to continue to strengthen an already extensive and fruitful agricultural relation between Australia and Chile, a task we carry out in coordination with the Australian Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade and the Australian Trade Office, Austrade, and other national and regional agencies of the Australian Government present in Chile. Thank you again for listening to the presentation today, and I hope you found it useful.